Hello, and welcome to another episode of At Home with APS. I'm Mrs. K, and today I'm joined by three very talented teachers, Miss Kathy, Miss Kraft, and Miss Lori, and together we have prepared an English language arts lesson for you today. I think you're really going to enjoy it. This lesson is geared for second and third graders, but as always, whoever you are, however old you are, we're so glad that you're here with us today. And we're excited for you to learn right along with us. So let's get to it. This week we've been talking about life science. If you'll remember, on Monday, we learned a lot about seeds. Miss Kraft read a really wonderful book called The Tiny Seed by Eric Carle about seeds that moved in the wind. We're going to talk a little bit more about that today. Seeds and plants are one of my favorite things, so I knew that we couldn't just talk about it for one day. We're going to get back to it today. Let's start with our word of the day with Mrs. K. Are you ready for this word? This is a decodable word. That means you can tap it out. Can you go ahead and read this word out loud? Adapt. Exactly. Say it again. Very good. Say it a little louder. Say it in your loudest voice. Very good. Adapt. Adapt is a really interesting word. Now, let's look over here at the dictionary definition. We can read it together. To change something so that it functions better in its environment. Wow. As humans, we are constantly adapting. We are constantly changing so that we can function better in our environment. Do you know that right now you are adapting? Typically, we'd be learning in school, but our environment changed. Now we have to stay at home. You've adapted. I've adapted. We've changed. Not just humans adapt, though. Can you think of something else that might change so that it functions better in its environment? Yeah, maybe animals. Animals adapt, or they have adaptations. They change over time so that they can function better in their environment. Plants also have adaptations. I like to think of the really prickly cactus. Picture a cactus in your mind with its pointy quills, its pointy spines. Those little points are adaptations because they protect the cactus from being eaten by other desert animals. Do you know that seeds also adapt or have adaptations? On Monday, we talked about the word disperse, because we know that seeds need to move from their parent plant to a new space so that they have room to grow. Well, seeds can't just stand up and walk away. They don't have legs like us. So they have adaptations that help them move from one place to another. Let's talk about some seeds and their adaptations. Have you seen this before? I bet maybe you've heard it called an itch bomb because they kind of make your skin itchy if you touch them for too long. Yeah, or a sticker bomb, exactly. Now, if you can look carefully at this seed pod, what do you notice? Or maybe you felt one before. Yeah, it's kind of sharp. It's rough. This seed has little hooks or little rough parts. That's an adaptation. Because this seed, if an animal walks by, it can get stuck to its fur, and then the seed moves from one place to another. Sometimes we call those hitchhiker seeds. Miss Kraft will tell you more about that in a little bit. We also have this type of seed. Have you seen this before? What adaptation does this seed have that helps it to move? Let's see. Did you see that, how it kind of spins? It almost has like a little wing. We call these helicopter seeds because they spin in the wind and it helps them move from one place to another. This shape is an adaptation. That helps it move. Let's talk about this other type of seed. You can read the picture or maybe even the word. These are sunflower seeds. Do you know how sunflower seeds move from one place to another? They don't look like they're sharp. They can't attach to an animal's fur. They don't have wings like this one. They can't really move through the wind. But they are a tasty snack. This seed, its special adaptation is that it's tasty. It's food. And so sometimes a little bird or maybe a little squirrel will find this seed and eat it and then move somewhere else. And then that animal will poop and the seed will come out. And that's where the new seed will grow. That's not how I would like to travel if I was a seed, but it works for them. Now, here in a minute, I'm going to show you a science experiment you can do at home. And it'll show you how certain seeds have adapted to move with wind, kind of like these guys. But before we do that, we need to fill out our Frayer model to make sure that we show what we know about the word adapt. I'm going to stick it on my chart. If you don't have this drawn on a piece of paper, go ahead, take a quick minute to draw your Frayer model. And then let's fill it out together. Do you remember what goes in the middle? Exactly, our word of the day. What was our word of the day? Adapt. I'm going to write it while you write it. Now, what goes up here? That's right, the definition. Let's read it again together to make sure we remember it. To change something so that it functions better in its environment. I'm going to write it while you write it. I have to write really small. I didn't leave myself enough room. That happens sometimes. Let's go to this next section. Do you remember what goes here? Our synonyms, exactly. So another word with a similar meaning. Can you think of another word that has a similar meaning to adapt? Yeah. Ooh. I bet you thought of this one. To change. Very good. I thought you might think of that one. Have you heard of this word before? This word is modify. Ooh, that's a $5 word. That's a good word. To modify also means to change. Maybe you change to fit your environment better. Now, these last two parts, I'm going to let you do on your own. We talked a lot about how seeds have adapted or how they have adaptations to better fit their environment. Maybe you can even write a sentence about how you have adapted before, how you have changed to fit your environment. Or maybe you have a favorite animal, and maybe you can do a little bit of extra research to think about or to learn about how that animal adapts to fit its environment. Now, before our time together is up, I want to show you a quick science experiment. Let me move my chair. Okay. To do this experiment, you're going to need a balloon and some seeds. Now, if you don't have seeds at home, you can maybe find really small pieces of sand or maybe even glitter. Ooh, that'd be kind of messy. You should ask an adult first before you use glitter. But if you do have seeds, I'm going to use this experiment to show how certain seeds move with the wind. Now, we saw these seeds that fly, kind of like a little wing. But some seeds move using the wind because they're so small and so light. And the wind is so powerful, it blows them around. We're going to show that right here in our experiment. So I'm going to take my seeds, very carefully dump some into my balloon. And now I'm going to be really careful that I don't inhale and suck up all these seeds, because I would choke on them. That would be a bummer. That's not how I intend the experiment to go. So there are some seeds in my balloon. I'm going to blow it up. You ready? Okay. Now this is always the hardest part for me, tying it. You might need to ask an adult to help you tie the balloon. Okay, so I have my balloon full of seeds. And when I pop this balloon, the seeds are going to move everywhere. Almost like seeds outside move everywhere with the wind. Are you ready to pop the balloon? It's going to be a little loud. You might want to cover your ears. Oh, I'm kind of scared. Ready? Let's see where the seeds go. Countdown. 3, 2, 1. Oh, it didn't work. So now, you can't see it because they're so small, but there are seeds everywhere. This is going to be quite the mess for me to clean up. Maybe make sure when you do this at home and you see where all these seeds move, maybe you should do it outside. Or inside with an adult and just use a broom to sweep up your seeds. I hope you enjoy filling out the rest of your Frayer model and you enjoy the time doing a science experiment of your own at home. Next up, we have Miss Kraft with a really cool piece of reading that you're going to do together.
Welcome, friends. I'm glad to have you back. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what we did on Monday and then move ahead to what we're going to work on today. So if you remember on Monday, we read this really amazing story called The Tiny Seed by Eric Carle. Talked about a seed that was blowing and it went through all the seasons and it survived. And finally, it ended up growing into a really large, giant flower. So it not only survived, it thrived. We're going to talk a little bit about that word today, as well as the words that Miss Kay taught you, adapt and adaptation. So what I'd like to do today with you is a close read. And you probably remember doing this in your classrooms with your teachers. And so today we're going to do some practice with that. Now, if you're able to get onto the APS website and download the close read for today, it's there, and you can print that out and work with me. If you don't have that option, don't worry. We're going to work on it together up here. So what you would need for today, if you have them, are 3 colors highlighter. Doesn't matter which ones. I'm going to use orange, green, and blue. And if you don't have that, you can have a pen or a pencil. So that all works. And if you don't have the sheet in front of you, don't worry. Well, you can follow along with me right up here. All right. So I wanted to just remind you a little bit about what we mean when we talk about close reading. Close reading is when we take a small piece of writing, it can be fiction or nonfiction, and we read it a couple of times. So when we read something once, you kind of just get an overview of what it was. You might work through some of the hard vocabulary, and then that's kind of it. And then we read it another time to dig deeper. But let me kind of tell you why we do that. So think about when you're at home and you might go for a walk in your neighborhood. Chances are you probably pass the same house or store or apartment a couple of times on your walk. Well, let's say that you're walking and you see a house and it has a really cute cat in the window. That cat's going to catch your attention, and you're going to focus on that cat, and then you keep walking. But when you come back around and past that place again, you might see some beautiful flowers planted in the yard that you didn't notice before. And so that's why we close read, because we notice things each time we read it that we didn't notice before. All right, so are you ready to practice with me? Let's go. So we read that fiction book on Monday. Today we're going to look at some nonfiction about the seeds that we talked about and that Miss Kay just showed you. So let's take a look and focus up at our board here. And this is our first read. So our first read, let's go through this with me. Let me get my pointer here so we can see the words together. So just read it with me. Humans need plants to live. Seeds are very important in our lives, but not every seed grows into a plant. A seed often has to travel to grow and germinate. To get enough sun and water, a seed has to be away from other plants. Wind helps spread seeds. Some seeds, called hitchhiker seeds, depend on animals to move. Hitchhiker seeds are often prickly and have rows of very small hooks, which stick to birds' feathers and animal fur. Then they take a ride with the animal. And finally, plants and seeds have adapted to their environment so that they can grow and thrive. All right, so that was a first read. And in our first read, we kind of just talk about what happened in the text. So we know that this is a paragraph about seeds and how those seeds thrive, and they can be moving around in different ways, right? There might be some hard words in here that you didn't understand. So, humans, that might not be a word that you've seen too much. I know we talked about this word germinate before. So that's a word that's in your vocabulary that you learned, but it's not one that we use all the time. So when we close read, that's our first reading. We're just getting the main idea of the article. So now you have the main idea talking about how seeds are really important to our lives, right? All right, let's take a look at a second read. And this is the fun one, because this is the one where you get to use your highlighters if you have them. And if you don't, you can mark the text. So let me quickly show you how I mark the text in a very simple way. So if you want to mark the text, you can use any kind of pencil, pen, whatever it is you have. You can just do a question mark for your I wonder. A star for I notice, And then a smiley face for I like this. So things in that reading that might jump out at you once you read it a little closer. All right, let's go back and read it for a second time and see what we want to highlight. So when I do this, I'm going to use a blue highlighter, just so you know, for vocabulary words that I think are important, or maybe I didn't know. I'm going to use an orange for information that might be new to me. That's that I wonder. And I'm going to use a green one for information that I may have already known, so that I know when I read that, I've got that. All right, are you ready? Let's try this. Humans need plants to live. Did you know that? I'm pretty sure I knew that, so I'm going to go ahead and make that my orange for information that I kind of already knew. Humans do need plants to live. Let's read our next one. Seeds are very important in our lives, but not every seed grows into a plant. That's really interesting, isn't it? I am going to take my green, and I'm going to highlight that one. I might put a star there because not every seed grows into a plant. I'm going to think about that one. I can even underline if I want, because that information's important. A seed often has to travel to grow and germinate. There's our word germinate. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that one. That's a great word. Remember our germination jar? How are your seeds coming if you were able to do it? Let's talk about that next week when we see if we have any germination going on there. All right. To get enough sun and water, a seed has to be away from other plants. So a seed needs some space to grow. Did you know that? I'm not sure I did, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. Actually, I'm going to put an exclamation point there because I think that's important information. That has to be away. Wind helps spread seeds. Oh, you know what? I knew that because that's what happened in our story, The Tiny Seed. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in orange because I know that wind is out there helping spread those seeds. Some seeds called hitchhiker seeds. Ooh, that's a really interesting vocabulary word. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that, and let's talk about that word, hitchhiker. So I know what a hiker is when I'm reading this word. A hiker is somebody that walks, right? What's a hitch? That might be something. If I see somebody driving a big truck and they have a trailer on the back, how is that trailer hooked on? It's hooked on with a big metal piece called a hitch. So it might be something that carries when they walk, right? So that hitch hiker. All right, so those seeds are going to be carried along and move. Awesome word. Hitchhiker seeds depend on animals to move. Hitchhiker seeds are often prickly. Ooh, I love that word too. Remember our adjectives? Yeah, we love those adjectives because they are going to make things come alive and be descriptive in that writing we did. So prickly seeds, ooh, interesting. And they also have rows of very small hooks which stick to birds' feathers and animal fur. So little hooks like fish hooks, but not that sharp. They don't hurt the animals when they do that. That's really interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that also, because they are traveling on those animals, and I love that idea. They're using each other. Then they take a ride with the animal. So we call that a symbiotic relationship, right? They're working together. Plants and seeds have adapted. Ooh, there's our word that Miss Anna taught us. Adapted to their environment so that they can grow and thrive. I love thrive and I love environment. This is a hard word to spell. I want you to particular attention to the N. You don't hear it, and it's a silent letter. So they grow and thrive. All right, so we have some good, you probably have made some different notes than I did. You may have starred a couple of things. Maybe you've highlighted some things that you thought were interesting. But you can see when we read things a couple times that we get more out of it, right? All right, so let's try this one more time. And when you read something for the third time, that's when you get to analyze it and maybe compare it. So I'm going to compare this to our tiny seed story. And of course, this has illustrations, right? So we can look at those illustrations and use that to help us understand what's going on in this paragraph also. So, humans need plants to live. That's my topic sentence. The author thought that was really important. So they do need plants to live. And this tiny seed was able to live by adapting to her environment, right? Yeah, she adapted because she went through all the seasons. And then finally, in the end, do you remember she grew into a really beautiful tall flower? All right. Now, we didn't have any hitchhiker seeds in our fiction story, but I do have some hitchhiker seeds up here so we can compare those and kind of see what's going on. So I wanted to show you these. These are hitchhiker seeds because they have tiny hooks in them, and it could hook onto an animal as they walk and be carried along. Another type of hitchhiker seed maybe are these really cool little ones that float down, right? These are probably carried on the wind, but they could also hook onto an animal. So those are awesome. So if you go out around your neighborhood and you see seeds there, right now it's the springtime, so you're going to also see those beautiful plants growing. Look for those seeds and see what you can find. All right, let's continue just real briefly now to read a little bit more to compare to our fiction story. So we have those hitchhiker seeds that we talked about, and that they have small hooks, and that they can hook onto animals and travel around. Here's what I want to talk about right now, though, especially in the story, the tiny seed. Remember how she adapted our little seed? She missed the bird eating her because she was so tiny. And then the wind blew her away. And it was winter. Do you remember winter when she was able to burrow down and keep warm? And that's how she adapted to that environment, right? And then she found the perfect place to land, and she was able to thrive. So you can see in our close reading that when you read things a couple of times, you're going to get so much more meaning out of that paragraph. You can read it the first time, and it might be a struggle sometimes to learn those words. But once you know them, then you can go back and use your knowledge that you've learned before to understand what's going on in this paragraph. So you did an awesome job today. I'm very proud of you. When you go out for your walk tonight, I want you to look around you and look at the plants and the flowers and see if you can find any seeds.
Hi, welcome back, friends, and it's time for Writing with Miss Lori, and I am so excited to be back with you today to continue our work on our informational report. I really hope you enjoyed today's lessons as much as I did. I learned so much from Miss Kay about how seeds are dispersed and learned so much about how to read and reread an article again to get more meaning out of it, so that was really wonderful. So today we are going to go a little bit deeper along our path of writing an informational report. And let's review really quick what we've been working up to. So far, for our informational report checklist, which you can find on the At Home with APS page at APS, we brainstormed. That was the first thing we did. We picked a bunch of different topics, and hopefully you brainstormed yours. Then we learned how to select credible sources off of the internet, And I hope that you have found some really wonderful websites that are helping you with your informational report. And then last time we were together, we took some detailed notes, and I'm hoping that you have taken several notes so that you'll be ready for our work that we're going to do today. I'm going to take our marker and check that off. Anytime I can check something off, I absolutely love it. Ooh, look at this nice big marker. Big old check. Check that off. So today, our work that we have set out for ourselves is number 4 on our list, which is I planned and organized my ideas. So those ideas are going to come from the notes that we took off of our sources that we used for the information for our report. And then number 5, we are going to begin talking about how we make a paragraph, how we use the information that we have gathered to help us write a really strong, well thought out paragraph. So number 5 says, I began my paragraph with a topic sentence. Include, oh, I forgot a D. I need to add included 3 details and a conclusion sentence. So we're going to talk about the beginnings of this today, and then on Friday when we come back together, we are going to actually write our paragraph around our topic. Okay? So let's get started for today. So today, the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need the notes that you took. This is my page of notes that I took so that I can use it to fill out my planning web. So who remembers what the topic was that I chose to write my report on? So think about that for a second. Think back to Wednesday. Oh, today is Wednesday. Think back to Monday and think about what was it that Miss Lori chose. If you said the moon, you are correct. So that is going to go in this nice big circle in the middle because that is the main topic of my informational report. So I'm going to write moon, M-O-O-N, and I'm going to put that there so that I remember that that is my main topic. Now the next thing is I have 4 other bubbles. And right now in our planning stage, it doesn't matter what order I put my thoughts in these 4 bubbles. It just has to be 4 different thoughts about the moon. So as I was reading my sources, I had my NASA source. Remember, I went to nasa.gov and typed in moon on the search bar, and it brought up all different kinds of information around the moon. And that is where I found the information about the International Observe the Moon Night. And that's going to be one of my topics that I'm going to write about in my informational report. That will become a paragraph. So I need to write that here. And I'm going to have to write across it because if I wrote it inside the bubble, it would be way too small. So International Observe the moon night. So that is one topic that I'm going to write about. Then I had, remember from Monday, I found a couple different sources around my house that were my kids when they were growing up. So I am going to use some information that I read in this book by Gail Gibbons, The Moon Book. And then I also found even more information in this book called A True Book, The Moon. And I'm going to include that in my report. So one of the topics that I want to address in my report is the phases of the moon. So I'm going to write that down here. And then another thing that really I found incredibly interesting was all the different legends and mythologies that different cultures or societies have about the moon, or why the moon was created, or how it came to be. And so I think that's something that I really want to address in my informational report as well. So that's going to be another category that I'm going to have. So moon mythology. And legends. Now this is a very, very, very wide, big topic. So when I do this in my report, I am really going to want to narrow that down. And I think the way that I would choose to narrow it down is I may just focus on legends and myths from New Mexico. So that way it's just much more specific than all of the legends and myths around why the moon came to be. So I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind as I'm getting ready to write. And then I have one more box, and this box I'm going to put maybe some basic information about the moon. So basic information. Because I think my readers, my audience, might be very interested in learning some basic things about the moon before I go into all these other topics for my report. So what I'm going to do now, as I get ready to start thinking about how to write a paragraph, I'm going to think about what order do I want to put this information in my report. So, looking at the different topics, so I have the International Observe the Moon Night, Moon Mythology and Legends, Phases of the Moon, and Basic Information about the Moon. Which one do I think is about that I need to start with? What does my reader really need to hear first? So of these four, I think this is going to be my first paragraph. And then, because I've done information, I think I'll probably move to phases of the moon. And then I might do the moon mythology as my third paragraph, and then finish with some information about something that I could do with my family and watch the International Observe the Moon Day. Okay, so that is what I want you guys to work on today. And then tomorrow, what we're going to do, or tomorrow, next time we meet, which will be Friday, we're going to start thinking about writing our paragraphs. And I'm just going to show this to you today because we're not going to fill it out. We will start filling that out together on Friday. And I have a very special guest that's going to come and join us. I'm not going to tell you who it is today, but is going to come join us to help us fill this out. So when we're looking at a paragraph, there's certain things that paragraphs have to have. They have to have a topic sentence, and we will talk more specifically about that. And then you're going to have 1, 2, 3 details that tell us more information about this topic sentence. And then our closing sentence kind of summarizes everything that we just talked about. So that's what we're going to do for each one of these different areas. So we have that to look forward to on Friday, and I look forward to being back with you and getting to share that part of the writing process with you. You guys are so lucky because up next we have Miss Kathy. So I look forward to what she's going to teach us today.
Hello and good morning, readers and writers. I'm so happy to see you again and to be your teacher once more. Welcome to Word Work with Miss Kathy. So previously, we've been working really hard on multisyllabic words. And today we're going to have a little bit of fun with our multisyllabic words. We're going to be breaking them up into pieces. And to do that, you're going to need a couple of materials. So I'm going to give you a chance. If you have them available, you can certainly get them ready today. I like pieces of paper, like Post-it notes or just like little scraps of paper for what we're going to be doing today. You could start with a whole sheet of paper and chop it up using some scissors. And we're also going to need something to write with. I'm writing with a black marker, but I always tell my students to use a pencil because if you make a mistake, it's so easy to fix it. You choose the tool that makes sense for you today. So once you have those materials ready, we're going to get started. And just to review, this word of the day from Miss K was really important. You're going to be seeing it or parts of it in a little bit. So keep that word adapt or adaptation in your brain. Are you ready, friends? I have a word that we saw from our previous episode on Monday, and it was our word of the day then. Do you remember this word? This is the word disperse. Disperse, we underlined certain parts of it because we said, I've seen those parts in other words before. Well, today, we're not just going to underline those parts. We're actually going to cut them out, and we are going to sort those word parts based on whether we usually see them at the beginning of a word, the middle of the word, or do we usually see that at the end of a word. So this word disperse is really important. But what I'm going to do is to organize my piles, my materials, so that I know if I usually see a piece of a word at the beginning, in the middle of the word, or do I often see that word part at the end? And there are a couple of important words that you need to know in order to do this activity. I'm going to teach those to you. When we often see a part of a word at the beginning, sometimes you'll hear your teacher call that a prefix. Prefix means that it is a common word part that you see at the beginning of the word. So you might hear me say prefix. That's a common prefix, which means that we often see it at the beginning of a word. Or you might hear somebody say, oh, that's a common suffix. Suffix. And that means it's at the end of the word. It's a common word part in a multisyllabic word that you'll see at the end. But sometimes we see a common word part, not usually in the beginning and not at the end, but we see it in the middle. And it's really important to know those word parts also and to be on the lookout for them. But I made another one, another category. I made other, because sometimes we see word parts at the beginning, the middle, and the end. And we're like, well, is that a prefix? Is that a suffix? And so we're going to make that our other category today. We're going to say, you know what? I see that word part all the time in different places. So we're going to need a fourth category for other. So I did some work before I came here today, and I created a chart to help me sort them. So I'm going to show you what my chart looks like. As you can see, my chart is a large piece of paper that I broke into 4 quadrants, 4 separate areas, so that I can put up my topics for beginning, middle, end, and other. And I'm going to tape those titles up. Beginning. Whoop. Tape can be tricky. I'm going to put middle next, beginning, middle, end, and other. Those are those parts that we see all over the place. And the reason I want you to do this game with me today while we're going to do this activity together is because this is something you can do with words that you hear and see when you're at home, when you're reading anywhere and you see a word and you're like, oh, I've seen that word part before. Write it down, make a note of it in your brain, and add it to your own little chart at home. So let's take that word disperse. We said we often see the letters D-I-S together, and we knew how to say that part of the word. So I'm going to use my scissors, and I'm going to cut out dis. And I'm going to ask you, in disperse, do we see it at the beginning, the middle, or the end? That's right, it's at the beginning. So I'm going to add that to my beginning category. And you can do the same. Dis. That is a word part that I often see at the beginning of a word. And then we said that we saw P-E-R together, per. We said we often see those letters together, and we often see them, that's right, in the middle. So I'm going to add that to my chart. And what we're creating is a chart of all these word parts that we can read quickly, which shows us how much we know as learners. That feels pretty powerful. Okay, so I'm going to move on to another word. And we're going to look for parts in this word. Adaptation. There's our word of the day. Adapt is hidden in there. And we're looking for a word part that we've seen before. And you as learners are getting really good at this. Now, my mind automatically went to the end of the word. Tion. T-I-O-N. Let's cut that out. We often see T-I-O-N at the end of a word. I'm going to add that to my category for end. All right. Looking back at our word adaptation, I often see A and D together at the beginnings of words. That is a common prefix. I'm going to chop out that prefix, and I'm going to add it to our chart. And I'm beginning to see a chart that's filling up with everything I know. That feels really good. So I have some more words and word parts that I'm going to have you look at. And let's see if we can really focus on this word. There are two pieces in this word that I think are really important. The prefix and the suffix in this word, unneeded, are very common. Un. I see un all the time. That is an extremely common prefix. So prefix means the beginning. So let's add it up there. I see un, that's very common. And then if we go back to our word, what I love about the word unneeded is that I still have a word up here, needed. I see E and D together at the very end of this word. I see ed often at the end of words, and that's because it is a common suffix. And then I have just a word left over, which is need, which I think is exciting. So I'm going to add this to our suffixes, our end of words. I can't wait until we get to fill our other category. Okay, my next word for you, I want you to focus on, can you read that? I see a common prefix, re. R-E. And then I see a common word, cycle. I've seen that before, and bicycle also. So recycle. I'm going to chop out re. That's a very important one. We see reuse, reduce. Re is a very, very common prefix. And then I'm going to look for a very, very special word. You may recognize this word from yesterday. Or not yesterday, Monday. Pollination. We said tion was up there, but do you see what's in the middle? I see in, and it's in the middle. But do you know what? I often see in at the beginning of words too. Include. So it doesn't quite fit into just prefixes, just middle, or just suffixes. It is in our other category. We see the letters I and N, those are common word parts that we see often in all different kinds of words in different spots. Okay, friends, I'm going to have you practice on my next word. Take a moment. Can you read that word? What parts are familiar? And what do you see? I actually see a word part non. So I'm just going to fold that over non and sense. Nonsense. I'm going to cut out non. And I love when this happens, when I have my prefix and then I also have a word left over afterwards. That's exciting. I'm going to add non to my beginning. So today, friends, we found a lot of word parts, suffixes and prefixes that are super common. Here we have dis, re, add, un, and non. Do you see how quickly I was able to read those word parts? This activity helps you and your brain organize some of those word parts to make you a more fluent reader. This is an important skill. Let's look at our middle parts. We found per, and over at end we said shun and ed. And then we also said we often find the word part in a lot of places. When you do this at home and you're looking for words that are in books or you're listening for those multisyllabic, those big words, I want you to start writing them down and making your own cards. Chopping up those different word parts that you see and to add them to your own chart. I would love to see pictures of you at home doing this, showing all the word parts that you know as your brain grows, because you're impressive learners. So today we looked at a lot of different things. We looked at a lot of words, and I'm wondering, do you remember these ones? Prefix and suffix. These are the last two words we're going to add up to our chart, because we need to say which one is which. Which one is beginning, and which one was end. Do you remember? Let's start with prefix. Go ahead and tell somebody you're watching TV with. Where do you think prefix should go on this chart? Was it a beginning sounds, middle sounds, or end sounds that are common? That's right, friends. It was at the beginning. And then we had suffix. Go ahead and tell the grown-up or sibling that you're watching TV with, where do you think this goes? That's right, this was our end sounds. So our prefix was for beginning, and our suffix was for end. So today we looked at a lot of words, including our word of the day with Miss Kay, which was adaptation. And when we looked at that word, we found that there were pieces that we had definitely seen before, including the word adapt. We also, with Miss Kraft, looked at nonfiction texts. We were looking for meaning even when there were words that we didn't know already. And we used our brain to look and search and hunt for pieces of those words that we did know. She used some really great examples. So readers, as you're using our skills tomorrow and the next day, I want you to be brave. You are a brave learner who can take on new things all the time. And you're definitely going to need to be brave as you write your paragraph all by yourself. So when you come back with Miss Lori, you're going to have really impressive writing that you can share with the people around you, with the grown-ups and your siblings. Because what you write and what you read is important. And a writer is the best kind of learner because they're sharing all the beautiful ideas in their brain with the world. And there are a lot of ways that you can share that, by reading it, by sending it to your teachers, or even with your own classmates if you're able to. All right, friends. So as you go about the world this weekend, and if you're able to go for a nature walk, that would be really incredible, because Ms. Kay also showed us things that we should be on the lookout for. We should be on the lookout for different kinds of seeds that occur naturally. Look around your neighborhood. What do you notice about them? Can you use some of the words that you've learned about disperse and adapt when describing them? I wonder how these seeds disperse. Do you remember? I remember these ones are called helicopter, which is very exciting. And then she also showed us some seeds that maybe you might even plant in your own germination jar, like Miss Kraft. I know my neighbors are working on a beautiful garden, and I can't wait to see what they grow. So learners, even though we're not in our classrooms and we're at home instead, I want you to see the world around you and know that the world around you can be your classroom too. Learning happens everywhere. And I'm so proud of you for using the world around you to learn. And so this will be my chance to say goodbye to you today. I won't see you again here on NMPBS. You can always find previous episodes where you can say hi to Miss Kathy and we can do some word work on our YouTube channel. So I want you all to have a fantastic day, to keep learning, and I want to say thank you for joining us today for At Home with APS, and that I hope you come back next time because there's going to be a very special guest with Miss Lori who you're going to love. Bye, readers and writers. Have a good day.